Melissa Bradley leads Tailored Career Services at Beacon College, the first accredited college for neurodivergent students. A nationally board certified teacher, she has 30 plus years in inclusive education and workforce development. Danny Lynn Fountain equips neurodiverse employees with tools to advocate for change and navigate complex systems. Author of 7 books, she bridges accessibility with business strategy to reshape workplace norms. Dr. Christopher E. Welpley researches neurodiversity in employment with emphasis on autism and workplace inclusion. His work appears in top journals and outlets like The Economist and Psychology Today. And we're going to start our conversation with Melissa Bradley. So Melissa, what are the most common misconceptions or challenges that neurodivergent college graduates face when they first begin their job search? And how does Beacon College help to address these challenges?
Thank you, Daryl. These are great questions. It's a misconception that getting a job is going to be easy and won't require more than a strong resume and a successful interview. Those days are long gone for not only neurodiverse individuals, but neurotypical graduates as well. Another misconception is that people are going to secure employment immediately upon graduation. These are not the trends we're seeing in the marketplace today. It's not uncommon today for it to take anywhere from 8 to 10 months to secure full-time employment after graduation. Companies today of all sizes and countless industries are eager to meet and consider candidates with a variety of stackable internship experiences, work, even volunteer experiences that really demonstrate throughout their time in college, not just their senior year, their skills that reflect their capabilities and their impact on any business or organization they may have served. They're also really trying their best to identify strong candidates through skills-based assessments given during the application phases or throughout the hiring process in conjunction with various interview phases they're going to be experiencing. Companies are using these assessments to often better determine the job skills of a potential candidate or even align those skills with the needed jobs that they are really actively seeking to staff versus the one the student or the graduate may have initially applied for. So here at our center and across the campus, we're helping our students and our graduates develop resources such as e-portfolios for all different majors, not just tech-driven, that reflect their learning experiences and their work product, such as project-based learning endeavors that will really help transfer and translate to hiring managers who are looking for new talent.
So Dr. Welpley, from an academic perspective, what are some of the more significant systemic barriers or biases that neurodivergent job seekers encounter during the initial job hunting process, and how does that impact their prospects?
Sure. So obviously companies who are hiring anybody, neurodiverse or not, they need to figure out a selection process or selection tool by which to hire these people. And more often than not, that's going to mean a job interview. And what research has shown us is that neurodiverse people tend to not perform as well at job interviews relative to neurotypical individuals. And I really appreciated the perspective that Melissa just gave us concerning giving people skills, skill-based assessments, ways to bring those into organizations or ways to talk about those things with organizations. But unfortunately, the research that we've done shows that even if you are perceived as qualified for a job and you're interviewing for it, you're still going to be less likely to be hired relative to similarly qualified neurotypical individuals. And we know this because if you are reading a transcript of an interview as opposed to just watching an interview, we actually have neurodiverse people outperform neurotypical individuals. So what that shows us is it's less about what people are actually saying, what skills they're actually bringing, and instead it's about the social perceptions, whether it be around speech, body language, eye language, things like that, or eye contact, things like that, that are unfortunately making decisions for people during that interview process.
So Danny Lynn, from an individual perspective, what are some of the crucial first steps that neurodivergent job seekers should take to identify strengths and suitable job paths so that they can have an effective job search?
Common advice that's often given to job seekers is the job you find may not perfectly align with your passions and interests. And for neurodivergent folks, I encourage them to flip that on their head. We know and we understand that when neurodivergent folks' interests are directly aligned with the work that they do, they tend to perform better, specifically due to the benefits of things like hyperfixation, special interests, and improved executive functioning when folks are actually working on something that they care deeply about. So, my first and biggest piece of advice is for students to truly niche into fields of interest and leveraging their cross dimensional interests. So, if a student is deeply passionate about French Napoleonic history and a lover of literature, identifying roles that would actually tap into both of those is going to best prime that student for success. So, understanding that the advice of finding a job, not the perfect job, is less ideal for neurodivergent job seekers because we do want them aligning their work with their interests for most appropriate success at work.
All right, well, thank you. So, Melissa, are there any specific strategies or programs that you find most effective in connecting neurodivergent talent with understanding and supportive employers? And if so, how do you prepare the job seekers for these encounters?
Absolutely. And our work is driven by three key motivators when guiding students and graduates here at Beacon College, and this works well for any neurodiverse learners throughout the nation. It's engagement, education, and experience. And we approach that in that order, truly, to engage our students as early as possible here on campus. That can be done elsewhere around the nation. We look at the earliest phase possible for them that's reflective of the work that we're doing and that they're doing with their career advisors. That's demonstrated here at Beacon College alone. Our first and second year students are actually the most highest group of individuals who are visiting the Career Center and engaging with their career advisors from the onset. We're also trying our best to take the guessing game out of immersing students and alumni truly in a variety of career fairs and events, both in person and virtual, to look at the different modalities, whether they're doing that here on campus with the college or they're replicating this when they return home or move back home after graduation. We're also able to partner with the National Organization on Disability to really help students prepare for, practice, and engage in virtual career fairs with neuro-inclusive employers. And we want to be sure we can teach students and our alumni how to actively engage effectively inside of a career fair, not just click and sit and get, but really moving from being a passive participant by browsing and clicking into someone who's engaging and learning and really making a name for themselves in these different arenas. We also want to help students understand that workplace accommodations, what that looks like as far as an early career, and how to help them learn about practice requesting accommodations in the workplace that may look different for them than what it looked like here when they were in college. It's something that every neurodiverse job seeker needs to understand so they're empowered to advocate for themselves in a professional environment, whether it be for interviews or even after being hired. Disclosure is difficult. It's a courageous step for so many individuals. It's critical to be sure that neurodiverse individuals and our graduates, even here at Beacon, know how to do so when the time is right for them. We're also connecting them with programs to really impact the growth of neurodiverse professionals with companies across the nation. Great programs with JP Morgan Chase, Constellation, Oracle, Johnson & Johnson are just a few of those who we're working with to help students explicitly understand about the company. And just what we were saying earlier, one of our panelists here, that they want to know what is passionate to them, what they connect with personally and professionally before they're ready to commit to exploring an organization even further. So having those connections to talents of pipelines and pathways that a company can teach students and candidates about is going to be critical for them to decide how they wish to engage and how they want to grow with a particular firm. One other program that we're offering to students and graduates also is that we're connecting with third-party recruitment firms who specialize in identifying neurodiverse talent. Companies are using them to look at recruiting these individuals and then help with the onboarding process and provide support for them once they are hired and now they're being successful in their roles they were hired for.
All right, thank you, Melissa. So, Dr. Welpley, surveys are showing that more companies are coming to understand the business case for neuroinclusion. I'm wondering if you can share any evidence-based research and strategies for companies who authentically want to include more neurodivergent talent in their pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the research that we've done, what we found is that for organizations that are moving in that direction, it's critically important to get top management teams or executives at the organization on board first. And this is going to do a few different functions. If you're a mid-level manager, director, or senior manager, and you're trying to do this type of stuff, there's going to be bumps in the roads. And having senior managers know that they've bought in and they're going to support you is going to help these other people who are actually tasked with initiating it to be more successful while they're doing it. Additionally, if the top management team is inside of the organization talking about it, they could also benefit from talking about it outside of the organizations. And the traditional examples when Microsoft engaged with the United Nations on this, and that suddenly you're having people inside of the company say, oh, we're going to be held accountable for this. But you're also having people on the outside of the company say, oh, we're going to be held accountable for this. And it gives another reason for the company to continue and maintain their efforts towards it. In addition, you may get some extra goodwill from these organizations, as in the case of the Rising Tide Car Wash, where it gives people a reason to be a customer of that specific organization outside of the specific products and services that they may offer. So getting top management team buy-in is a critical component early on in the process for trying to start these types of programs.
Chris, let me quickly follow up on that too. Are there any types of specific accommodations that deliver the highest rate of return on investment for both the employer and the employee?
So when it comes to accommodations, it's going to be really individualized for the specific person and for that specific employee. And so as much as I would like to say, we just need to cut out distractions from the environment, because for a lot of people that is going to be the case, that's not going to be the case for everybody. And so really what these companies need to do is develop a dialogue between neurodiverse employees and really probably all employees and then the managers to give feedback on, hey, what's going on in this work environment that's helping? What's going on in this work environment that's hurting? And really giving the employee the voice in the situation, which can be a difficult thing to do, but giving them the opportunity to talk with their managers about what types of accommodations they would need. As Melissa mentioned, this obviously would include disclosure and would likely include some level of training on the part of the managers as well. However, we find that combination of disclosure and knowledge on the part of the manager is really what's going to make the best outcomes for these employees and for these organizations.
All right. So, Danny Lynn, for neurodivergent individuals who have secured an interview or are planning to unmask, what kind of advice can you give them as far as preparing to be self-advocates for themselves, to communicate their needs, and to navigate potential biases during the interview process?
There are a level of resources available to individuals before disclosure and via self-serve means. Something like 56% of accommodations also can be implemented at no cost to the employer. So as we're weighing disclosure, as we've all discussed, there are some steps that neurodivergent folks can take as they're in the interview process before disclosure. So things like enabling closed captioning if they're in virtual interviews to help with recall of information, using AI assisted note takers, using preparation materials and having notes at the ready to ensure that even in an interview context, when there isn't always time to pause and collect, that they have thoughts collected so that they can show up as their best self in that interview. Noise canceling headphones, which many folks, especially folks coming out of the college environment, do own and use regularly already. So before disclosure, leveraging a lot of that self-service content and material that's available. And after disclosure, ensuring that they're selecting the right time to disclose that's both protecting them as the candidate in the interview process and helping them perform their best. So if they're able to, engaging in the first round interview with self-service accommodations, and then perhaps disclosing during the second round or final round interview where the employer has reciprocally said, hey, we are deeply interested in you beyond that first round level, offers the candidate some level of protection at that point. And then just engaging as transparently as they're able to and articulating that, hey, by supporting these needs that I have, you're going to see the best that I have to offer, which is going to make it easier for you to make the most informed decision about my candidacy. Because if you are not getting my best self, you and I are at a disservice in this hiring process, because you might miss out on a good candidate, and I, of course, might miss out on a job that I am well equipped to succeed in.
So Melissa, once a Beacon College graduate reaches the promised land of landing their first job, does Beacon have any resources or ongoing support to help ensure that these graduates do well in that career and also receive the professional development that they need?
Absolutely. It's critical to not just focus on our undergraduates, but the future of our graduates and their development and the transitions they're going through after graduation as the job market continues to evolve around them. We do offer long-term career growth by providing our graduates with ongoing access to investments and tools that we're leveraging with our undergraduates, because we can completely see how it's necessary for them while they're in the workforce, or as things transition abruptly or otherwise for them when in the workforce. The idea is that that transitional programming can help them, whether it be for planned or unplanned events they may encounter. So first thing we have is a dedicated career services advisor for alumni. That's important so that they know that the necessary trust that they built into the programs here at Beacon will continue with them after graduation. It's not just to check on resumes or things, really to help them with the tools and navigating through scenarios they could be facing when in the marketplace or still struggling to find a role in the marketplace of their choice. We also want to be sure the investments we're making in all of our innovative programs are tools that our alumni have access to and are using. So the example of using our big interview practice training system is also open to all alumni. And we're seeing them use it in areas where they are looking to change a career, or they've abruptly had to change the career not by their choice, but by life happening at that point. We also have developed a guide to industry certifications to really promote that continuous learning model that's going to be critical for their success, because a degree alone is that starting point. How will they demonstrate to an employer that they're growing in their field? They're taking on independent learning activities and getting certified in key areas that will help them grow and help a company thrive also. We've also wanted to activate and connect and give purpose to our alumni by way of how can they also give back and mentor current undergraduates who are going to be experiencing many of the things both of our panelists have already discussed today. So we've actually partnered with Next for Autism, and we're now operating one of the first in the nation one-to-one bilateral virtual mentoring programs between accomplished professionals who are Beacon alumni and aspiring professionals who are Beacon undergraduates. This is a 14-week mentorship program that allows our alumni who have found success in a field of their choice or across the last few years to impart that success and help someone who's just launching in that space or still trying to navigate through what is the job going to look like, what should this look like for me when I finally graduated. And that particular professional exchange is helping our alumni have greater value than ever before, and also give them a chance to connect their businesses, their organizations with our campus and our students who might be interested in the future there too.
All right, thank you. So Dr. Welpley, beyond the initial hiring, what does your research indicate are some of the key factors for successful long-term career progression for neurodivergent employees?
Sure. So first, the supervisor can't be understated as to how important they are. And interestingly, if you talk to people who are on the spectrum or neurodiverse, oftentimes what they want from their manager is to be held to the same standard and held as accountable as any other employee at that organization. On the other hand, from a management perspective, you also need to understand that some of the needs that these people might have might be just a little bit different. Some of the accommodations they might need may be a little different. And so there's a tendency sometimes on the part of the managers to want to maybe give people a little bit of a reprieve or maybe a little bit of a break relative to the other employees. But what we find, again, from these neurodiverse individuals is they really don't want that. They do want to be held accountable. And so it's really kind of like balancing a teeter-totter, if you will, where you're holding people accountable and to the same standards, but you're doing so in a way that's going to be tailored to their specific strengths. You're going to build roles around the things that they should be doing and can be doing well in the organization. And I think that's true really not just for neurodiverse employees, but good managers are really doing this for most employees that they have. I also don't want to understate the importance of coworkers, which oftentimes don't get talked about in this field as well. Because when you think about smoothing some of the day-to-day interactions that individuals may have in the organization, they're going to spend a lot more time interacting with their coworkers than they are with their managers. And having good coworkers who can take 30 seconds to have that important conversation or have a conversation with you, or, hey, do you know what? I just have a few questions about how to get this work done. Having those coworkers is really important for the success of that individual, but also just for the well-being of that individual and having those social connections at work. And what our research shows is we have a lot of employees out there or a lot of coworkers out there who really do enjoy being in that role of building relationships with their coworkers, particularly if those coworkers are neurodiverse.
Well, what you just said, Chris, I guess raises another question. Are there particular workplace cultures or management styles, and I know we're talking in general here, but that are more conducive for neurodivergent employees?
Sure. So we are in the process of doing some research, and it looks at a array or a kind of an array of attitudes, if you want to think about it like a continuum, where on this side you have people who are more related to like a medical or a deficit-oriented approach to neurodiversity, which would oftentimes be like, hey, what is the diagnosable criteria here? All right. If you go to the other side, you have more of a social model for disability, which is like, well, these people are different, but it's not about deficits. It's just about differences, and the barriers that exist in the workplace can easily be removed for people who want to put the effort into doing that. So if you think about that spectrum, having people who are more in line with, we can remove the barriers that have impeded your success in the past, going forward into the future. And again, going back, it's maintaining that dialogue with your coworkers, maintaining that dialogue with your manager, and having them be open, respectful, and accepting to the differences that you bring to the workplace, because those differences are both going to be a great source of strength, but oftentimes could be a source of frustration for you and some of the people around you. And so learning to balance that attitude of these people bring a lot to the workplace, or these neurodiverse individuals bring a lot to the workplace that we really want to accept, and that we think that they are going to bring strengths to match that. And so that's really an important component.
So Danny Lynn, you touched on this during our conversation, but I wanted to drill down a little deeper on this particular point. What advice can you provide to neurodivergent job seekers about how to build a supportive network, advocating for necessary accommodations, and navigating workplace dynamics to ensure that they have a long and successful, thriving career?
Yeah, it's really a twofold approach to building that network and support system. So before an individual is at a specific company, there are industry-wide or industry-agnostic support systems and communities for neurodiverse folks in the professional space. A great place to start looking for those is on LinkedIn, taking a look at LinkedIn groups and looking for those groups specific to neurodivergent individuals, either in the specific geolocation or industry, to start building those relationships. And then once in a place of work, reaching out to see if that place of work has a neurodivergent or broader disability employee resource group, different resources, an accessibility department, specifically in the technology space. Many IT departments today have assistive technology resources, and plugging into these different places to build community alongside the traditional career development advice of seeking out mentors, seeking out sponsors, building relationships with slightly senior peers. Marrying that with some neurodivergent specific support can be tremendously helpful.
So Melissa, despite best efforts, challenges do arise. So can you talk to us about some of the challenges you've observed happening to neurodivergent employees once they're on in the workforce?
Absolutely. One of the first challenges we see, first and foremost, is underemployment. This is not just something that's affecting Beacon graduates. It's a global trend that we're seeing across industries, across campuses, and for alumni everywhere. And this is important because it's not where we're looking at not aligning skills with the opportunities and not sharing or disclosing how I might learn best or how I might perform best with my employer, and therefore they're seeing a stagnant approach to what work can look like for individuals who learn differently and perform differently. Through ongoing continuous education, credentialing, or whatnot, we want to help students and graduates see that the position you begin with may not be the position you were first actually skilled for, but it was the position they took, and it's almost a sense of underrating their own abilities. We want to do our best to help individuals push through that and that persistence it's going to take to grow in their fields. Something else which we find to be a trend that we're seeing everywhere is a lack of advancement opportunities for neurodiverse professionals, whether it be through information with, like we talked about, ERGs, employee resource groups, or aligning with individuals who believe in the advancement of those who learn and perform differently. We're seeing too many individuals who are more than capable, more than skilled to grow in leadership capacities with companies of varying sizes, but it's not happening for them. So how can they combat that? Talking to their direct supervisors, really being candid about what their intent is and what their goals are, being explicit about that, joining those ERGs that we discussed briefly earlier, attending networking events, and even offering to mentor other new hires, whether they be neurotypical or neurodiverse. That would help someone really start to showcase their leadership skills and their interest in growing more. Something else through a different lens, which we're seeing as a part of this, the workforce itself, and Chris was talking about this briefly earlier, was employers who champion neurodiverse hiring, and that's being developed through their mid-level managers, executive team members, and the like, and then hiring people. However, what we're not doing is making sure that we're helping employers provide the training necessary for frontline managers and supervisors. We're going to be directly working with new neurodiverse hires in their organization. How can they best support an employee? They may not have gone to college and had that background. They may not have been a part of those conversations to begin these initiatives. But what can we be doing for them to help best empower them to support new hires in the most effective ways? Something that we're doing here at Beacon College is we're leveraging even technology to help train those individuals using mixed reality simulations, so they too have an arena of how to best support someone who is hired, and now they're tasked with developing them, training them, and helping them find levels of success. That has been critical in the advent of making sure that all levels of professionals are being supported, as they might be the hiring individual, those who are managing them, or those who are making those global decisions to really grow these initiatives.
All right, thank you, Melissa. So Dr. Welpley, looking ahead, are there any emerging trends or research areas that you think will significantly impact the landscape of neuroinclusion in the workplace?
Sure. So I want to build off something that Melissa just mentioned, which is this role of educating not just frontline workers, but not frontline managers, but coworkers, and really everybody who's going to be interacting with neurodiverse individuals in the organization. Because what we found is those hiring differences go away pretty quickly if people are trained, even in just 30 minutes of training with short quizzes afterwards, that those hiring differences go away. And so it really plays an important role. And I think it builds on this idea of a relatively new research theory called double empathy, which is previously research would have said, I am interviewing you and I view you as different than me. But what double empathy brings in is not only do I view you as different than me, but you view me as different than you. And so instead of it being really just a one-way street, it makes these interactions a two-way street. And I think that's going to push research in a good direction because it's going to have more perspectives and it's going to have hopefully some outcomes and some research outcomes that are going to be more manageable by organizations in terms of how can we not just shift focus here, but shift focus on the entire process. And again, that involves managers, coworkers, senior team members, and neurodiverse individuals themselves, because that's really what it's going to take to push this research forward. I also want to highlight one other piece, which is historically, a lot of the research in neurodivergence has taken place within the medical field, again, with a deficit-oriented approach. With the increasing prevalence that we've seen now, 1 in 31 individuals who are 8 years old being diagnosed with autism, and of course increasing in other forms of neurodivergence as well, is that there's a lot more researchers and a lot more voices at the table. And I think there's going to be more communication between this medical side and more of this social side. And I think that really this transdisciplinary research, or research is going to involve people from multiple types of groups around campuses, is going to be able to push organizations forward, because there is some good research here. But it's hard to figure out how do you apply this good research to a really wide variety of people who are now under a neurodiversity umbrella. And over time, what I think is going to happen is that you're going to get solutions that aren't just good for neurodiverse individuals, but they're really going to be universal solutions that you can apply to all employees. Because as we know, if you look under the neurodiversity umbrella, you get a really large heterogeneity, not just Within autism, you get a large heterogeneity, but within ADHD and with all these other types of neurotypes under the neurodiversity umbrella. So we're really going to need some of these universal solutions. And again, I don't think that's just going to apply to people who are neurodiverse. I think they're going to apply to everybody and hopefully make for a better workplace for all employees, again, not just for neurodiverse individuals.
All right, thank you. Danny Lynn, considering the current employment landscape, are there any accessibility tools or practices that you would recommend neurodivergent job seekers equip themselves with before going into the workplace to ensure that they have a more equitable work environment?
Certainly. While corporate America specifically and the corporate landscape as a whole is still in many ways catching up to accessibility and accommodation needs, those job seekers who are coming from a secondary or higher education place background are actually at an advantage because, at least in the States, the understanding of accessibility needs and individualized accommodations needs at the secondary and higher education space are well underway, well supported. So the first place I recommend neurodivergent learners to look is their own high school and college IEP, accessibility, accommodations plans to see what of that would transfer into the corporate landscape, because there isn't a need to start from scratch just because those learners are moving into industry. They can build on what they've already been leveraging and already feel deeply comfortable with. If the job seeker is not coming from a secondary or higher education landscape and don't already have a recent roadmap, or we're in a space where those resources weren't richly built out for them, I would turn to what they do in their day-to-day lives. There's a bit of a joke that the majority of millennials are using closed captions even beyond those that are neurodivergent or hard of hearing or deaf. But the reality is we have adopted so much of accessibility and assistive technology into our day-to-day lives as a population. And so whatever folks are using on a day-to-day basis is often the first and best place to start as they enter the workforce. But then also identifying those communities like those on LinkedIn or diving deep in neurodiversity and neurodivergent Reddit. There are so many crowdsourced resources for this specific dimension of neurodivergence was best supported by these technologies. If you feel that you're matching up with XYZ experience, consider testing this. And we are in a richness of information right now where no learner, no job seeker has to start from zero. They can tap into resources and understand what might be most relevant, not only for their needs, but also the corporate environment they're stepping into.
All right, well, that will have to be our last word. Melissa Bradley, Dr. Christopher Welpley, and Danny Lynn Fountain. Thanks for the knowledge.